Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Untapped. We have the pleasure of having Sean Simpson from Veeam join us this morning.
Hi, everyone. Hey,
So,
Ernesto. It's great to see you.
same here. It's been about a month since we did one, so this is going to be great. Today, the topic is disaster recovery as a service powered by Veeam. We'll go through how simple and easy it is to set up a disaster recovery environment and have the secondary site available for unplanned events. So we'll start with the agenda. Sean, if you want to just take us to the next slide.
Here we go.
So we'll focus in on why RAS. We won't spend too much time there about the whys, the hows. However, we're going to demonstrate over the next 30 minutes, and we encourage you to join for the end, where we'll get to see Veeam disaster recovery in action in a demo. So we'll focus in on the why. We'll look at the disaster recovery Veeam Cloud Connect design and deployment tips. We'll drive into the demo and understand how we can achieve your RTO and RPO objectives, and then we'll end it with some FAQs. So, from a housekeeping perspective, anywhere around 20 to 30 minutes focused in on Veeam backup replication and the easy integration into Cloud Connect. Sean, you want anything to that before we start?
No, but DRaaS is one of my most favorite topics, to be perfectly honest with you, Ernesto, because obviously when we're talking about disaster recovery as a service, we're talking about a lot of times parts of the environment that are very critical to one's business, one's livelihood, one's ability to conduct their day-to-day operations. And there's a reason that they've included them in disaster recovery solution, and being able to fail over and really have little downtime. So for me, this is a pretty exciting topic from that standpoint.
Awesome. Awesome.
And when we get into you know planning for disaster recovery, when we talk about business continuity, we don't always think about we think about the big picture, losing an entire data center, losing an entire infrastructure, but we sometimes forget that most of the times these issues that are going to cause us problems are one or two servers or a particular application go down. So when we think about that, 82% of businesses, they don't feel prepared to recover their data center in the event of a disaster. And when I fell into this business many years ago, um, if a company couldn't survive a disaster, most likely within the next year to year and a half, they were out of business. So it's
Yeah,
very critical, whether it's a flood, a fire, a storm, malware, hardware failure, or corruption. Let's just take a brief moment and think about the hurricane that just hit Florida and how long that's going to recover. If customers, if partners had the ability to fail over to a data center that was outside of that storm zone, they would be able to continue their business, right, Ernesto, but also maybe
yeah,
continue to provide services that are important for those individuals within these
absolutely.
areas.
Absolutely. That's a great example of being ready and being planned, right? And you move over to the next slide, right? And before you continue, Sean, and I say it, right? Today we're focusing on the technology, and a lot of the times the technology helps you get from point A to point B, but it's really about the people, process, and technology, right? Identifying which people are going to be involved, putting together an organized process, a process where you can reference in the event of, and of course the technology. And in order to meet those objectives, you need to ask yourself some difficult questions. And I'll hand it off to you, Sean, to go over those questions.
Yeah, you really do need to think about those questions. And when we're talking about disaster recovery as a service, we're talking about, what's your current recovery time objective? How long is it going to take you to rebuild a server? How long is it going to take you to rebuild an application? But like you mentioned, the people are a big aspect of that. Also, how much downtime can you afford? When I got into business continuity disaster recovery, it was always like tier one, tier two, tier three
Yeah,
applications.
absolutely.
Um, we don't hear that too much anymore because I think a lot of things have gone to software as a service in the cloud, right? But it's still important because things still happen to those. Also, if we were to go to each department and ask each individual, rank your applications, every department's going to feel that they're important, right? So we really got to determine what are our core business capabilities and what do we need up first in the event of a disruption, as well as which applications, which hardware depend on those so that we bring them up in the correct order. And that's what's really starting to kind of bring in, disaster recovery as a service, or as we like to call it, DRaaS. And then when we incorporate it with Cloud Connect, to protect the approach that has become increasingly popular. So when we think about disaster recovery as a service, we offer an alternative to traditional disaster recovery methods,
Right.
in which a business must set up equipment and operate offsite DR. So we got to have the people, we got to have a place to go, we got to have the data, and we got to get that data. Disaster recovery as a service shifts that responsibility to a third-party provider, like you folks, and it really allows you to save some money on that hardware and the operational expenditure, and then allows you to kind of meet your RTOs and your RPOs. But ultimately, let's say your people, there's a disruption, hurricane, fire, flood, something impacting your organization. It allows the people to deal with the people issues, and it allows
Yeah.
the technology and the partner to deal with the equipment and the hardware. And we're
Well
going to
said.
learn, and we're going to learn, right, Ernesto, that within Veeam we can create failover plans. We can do a partial failover. We can do a full failover. So we're going to have many options to be able to do that. And that's really where we're going to focus on the business needs and the people needs from that standpoint. And
Well said, Sean. Well said. And I think, right, it's all about understanding the use cases. Like, what can we achieve, right, with this technology, right? Which
correct.
check boxes can we check, right, from a process perspective and from a technology perspective to get you from point A to point B, and to give you the ability to be online when this disaster does occur. So let's go ahead and drive through the use cases.
Yeah, so, let's talk a little bit about, from a Veeam, when you're using Veeam as the tool to incorporate, you know, Veeam disaster recovery as a service with a partner like yourself, we're able to understand what were to happen. So when we think about something like this, where we have our Veeam backup and replication, we have our tier one servers on the left. So these are servers that we've identified as needing the lowest recovery time objective, the lowest recovery point objective. These are mission critical servers that this particular organization depends on for their day-to-day operations. They cannot live without these. Their business will fail. So in this case, they've determined that we want to replicate these servers from tenant location A to our Veeam Cloud Connect infrastructure with assurance. So we can replicate these servers. We can set up that replication. We can do a 15-minute replication where we're going to be taking a snapshot replication every
Yep.
15 minutes of these virtual machines. And we're going to have these virtual machines sitting and waiting in an infrastructure, powered on, ready to go in the event that we need to fail over. We're going to have via Veeam Cloud Connect, we have we're going to be talking to what we call Veeam Cloud Gateways. And it's essentially like a VPN and SSL connection over the internet to the Veeam Cloud Connect infrastructure. There is additional resources if needed for WAN acceleration, if for whatever reason the connection between the tenant location and the Veeam Cloud Connect is not up to par. We can use some WAN acceleration that will limit the amount of data that needs to travel over the internet to make things much faster. On the tenant side here, we're going to have our hardware plans. So we can have hardware plans that identify several different virtual machines that need to come up in a specific order. So we can fail over an entire hardware plan, or maybe we just need to fail over one individual server. But we'll be able to bring failover to the data center, and we'll be able to, at that point, with the network extension appliance, specifically for a partial failover, from a networking standpoint, it will happen automatically. People that are reaching the server that used to be here and now it's here, they're not going to see any different. They're going to be able to connect to that via the IP schema, via the IP redirect, via the network extension appliance. So to the end user, if a server goes down, we fail over, it comes up, business as usual. When it's time, go ahead, Ernesto.
No, no, that's again, that's exactly it, right? So it's all a separate environment where users can connect to and won't feel a difference. Of course, there's some networking aspects that need to be included, how do users connect, but we'll showcase those in the demo. There's several different options included in the uh, DRaaS solution with Veeam on how your clients can connect. If typically they use VPNs, RDP. So again, very open, very integrated, and two separate use cases that we want to really drive forward is there's a concept of partial failover, which we will discuss a little further in the next couple of slides, and then there's a use case on full disaster, full failover, which again I believe will be showcased in the next couple of slides.
If, and again, working with assurance IT, you're going to have the expertise, you're going to have the people to, at time of disaster, at time of failover, people to assist you. So you're not going to be going into this alone. Like we mentioned, if you're in a situation where it's more of a large regional type event, maybe it's an ice storm in Canada, maybe it's a snowstorm, maybe it's something that's impacting a large number of people, those people can worry about the people aspect.
Yeah,
Assurance IT can worry about the IT aspect and work with you. And of course, Ernesto, you can do tests of this too. You can do a test failover. You can do a test
for sure, for
fail back.
sure.
So it's not.
And that's what you want to be able to do, right? You want to, you don't want to be tied in as a cloud connect provider. We're selling you the ability to have a disaster recovery as a service plan, but you want to be able to test those on a regular occurrence, and that's key, especially for those customers or clients that are on the live today. If they are following ISO requirements, you need to test this on a regular basis, meaning 3 months is probably best practice. Um, every 6 months or even yearly. Again, because there are different VMs, there are different applications being spun up in the environment, and you need to make sure that with the maturity model, as you grow, the technology, the services will be available, but you need to bring it up a stack into the technology model and say, okay, now that the finance department says this specific application is critical to me, can we get the finance department to get in there and test and validate that they can work and they have everything they need in the event of a disaster? So there is a maturity process. Again, this will bring you from point A to point B, where you bring up the environment and then you continue enriching that maturity process. You continue enriching your process in order to achieve, a complete DR scenario. And it could take months, it could take years, but you're going the right path.
Direction. Yep, takes time. So talking about networking, we'll give a high level overview, and then during the demo, it could come up a little bit more. The key to this whole thing is the network extension appliance, and that's part of the Veeam deployment. It's a Linux-based appliance that acts as essentially, it's not a switch, it's not a firewall, but it has some like a VPN concentrator. It uses a little bit of everything, but it's really a tool that allows you to extend the network from the tenant location to the provider, in this case, Insurance IT, and it allows you to, access those technology when you do failover. So it's automatically deployed and configured. It's managed via the Veeam backup and replication interface. It's tunneled inside the cloud gateway, and it preserves communication between the running VMs regardless of the physical location. So it's really going to extend the tennis network to Assurance IT and allow them to access these servers, whether it's a partial failover or a full
Or a
site
full fail.
failover. But we'll go into a little more detail during a full site failover, how you're probably going to want to establish, in some cases, more of a dedicated network connectivity just from a protection standpoint. But we can talk about that as we go through some of these slides. So as we can see with the partial failover, we lose a VM virtual server, host server here, and it comes up within Assurance IT. As soon as we do that failover, we're able to, the networking comes online, and individuals that were originally accessing it on this side are now accessing it in this environment. Now, the nice part about this is, there's several types of failover. We can do a failover. We can fail back. So, for example, if we did fail over and then realized that we didn't need to fail over, we can fail right back without changing, losing anything. We can commit this failover at Assurance IT and essentially commit it and make it become the permanent server at this point in the event that for whatever reason we couldn't rebuild it. And then we could also fail back where we could take the changes that were made during the failover and bring them back with us to the original so we can kind of go full circle in the event if we have to from that standpoint. So it's full life cycle, failover, fail back, so we can return to production when needed in that case.
Yep.
And then, of course, we have a full site failover. So in this case, full site failover could happen for multiple reasons. It could be because maybe we're going to be doing some sort of upgrade. We're going to be doing there could be a planned failover, meaning we know a storm's coming and we want to proactively fail over. So in that case, we fail over to Assurance IT and our entire workload. We could use a failover plan in this case where failover plans are built within Veeam backup and replication, and they allow you to pick multiple servers that you want to fail over in a sequential order based on the boot priority so that we can simply just do a failover plan, initiate the failover plan, and this will all happen at once. And again, we'll have the network capability to continue to communicate. So individuals and users are not going to really see anything different from that standpoint, Ernesto. They're going to have access to the databases, to email, to the servers that they need to do their day-to-day job, as if they were still, reaching here the original data center from that standpoint.
Yep, definitely. And there's my favorite slide, the big X, the event
Yep,
where
because
your site is unavailable and connectivity is available at Assurance IT, where you can connect in and start running those VMs in the environment. And the failover plan is really key. It's what drives the sequence, and we'll showcase that in the demo coming up in the next minute or so.
and to be honest with you, a lot of times when we do have that big red X, meaning that original production data center's gone, a lot of times that failover site, Assurance IT, will become the production site because things are running, and then you guys can offer them the space, the power, the resources to just run as in production there.
Yep, definitely, definitely. And here we go. We'll drive through the demo. Bear with me here. So one of the big things that we want to go ahead and um, one of the key points is that the seamless integration into Veeam backup and replication. As you can see, I'm in my Veeam backup and replication console. Once that communication has been established with the service provider, ideally you need to provide them how many CPUs, how much memory, how much storage is being used, and how many networks are available. Once that's done, the provider, which in this case is Assurance IT, you would scan the provider in backup or replication console, and you will see those resources will be provided to you. Very simple. Once we scan, you'll see we also do Cloud Connect backup as we demoed on our last Untapped. But this time we're focusing on the replica resources. So in this case, this environment has been granted 25 CPUs, 50 gigs of memory, 1 terabyte of storage with one network and one public facing. So ideally, once those resources are presented, you can go ahead and through, again, the Veeam Backup Replication Console, create your replication jobs to point to the Assurance IT Cloud Connect environment. So it's a simple replication job. The only thing that changes, I won't spend too much time there because I really want to focus on the failover. However, if you can see here, the target is cc.assuranceit.ca. And in the destination, here's where you can go choose where you want to send, which hardware plan you're going to be using, because all those resources are contained in a hardware plan, and which data store you want to send that data to. Again, visible as you connect into the service provider and you set up your networking to accommodate. So once the schedule is in place and those VMs are being replicated, you'll see those replicas being available to you in the replication, in the replica ready section of your environment. So in our case, we have 5 VMs that are being replicated, a DC and 4 standard Windows 2019 VMs. So from this case now, we know they are available and ready at the service provider. So what we want to do, as Sean mentioned, we want to go ahead and create a failover plan. A failover plan as simple as a sequence of servers that you would like to power on in the event of, right? So in our case, this is important. We'll drive through this, and you'll notice that my failover plan is in sequence with those 5 VMs. The lab DC, the domain controller, being the first because you want it to power it on and provide infrastructure services prior to the other VMs booting up. And you can go ahead and set the delay according to how long it would take before your application server would require a database server to power on. So very customizable, very simple, set it from the delay section. So in our case, we have 5 VMs, and we talked about how do you connect into the environment when a disaster happens. So there's many different ways. Um, some customers are using terminal services as an access point in. Some other customers are using VPNs, whether they be software or hardware. We have the ability to rack and stack them at the data center and provide access to your segment so you can manage them and have access to them and create that homogeneous where if you're using SonicWall or using Meraki, your customers don't have to change that VPN access. It's all a matter of just changing a pointer on the desktops. So what we'll do now is really go through failover plans. So in the event of a disaster, there's a good chance your Veeam backup replication console is unavailable, right? So you need to be able to connect in and manage the environment and kick off that start plan when that environment is not available. So what we do, okay, 1 second here, we'll go ahead and reduce this. Every um, every tenant, so every Veeam backup replication user or client that uses Assurance IT is called a tenant. And in this case, this would be your tenant console to your service provider information. Here you can see um, in the Cloud Connect replication, you have 5 VMs, 12 vCPUs, how much memory is being used, and how much total storage is being used. So this is at a glance view of your environment that you are replicating to Assurance IT. But what we want to focus on is the failover plan. For sure, now that you don't have access to your environment's down and you want to kick off DR, this is where you would, this is the website you would hit, and this is where you would initiate the failover. So we're going to go ahead and initiate that 5 VM failover in the cloud that just visually saw in the Veeam backup replication console. So we'll go ahead and kick this off. You do have an option of the startup plan. Do you want to go ahead and really pick your date or start from the latest restore point? We will go with the latest restore point, kick off the failover plan. Okay, so what's happening now is that sequence that was established is starting to the boot up sequence service provider level. So we are lucky we have the Veeam service, we have the Veeam console available. It is not failover, real failover plan, but a test. So we can go here and see that the failover plan is in progress. So those VMs are powering on at the service provider and will be available to be able to connect to shortly. So as this goes on, you can visualize the ready state and they move into a processing state. So this is going to kick off. I went ahead and set a 15-second delay per server. So within a minute and a half, we should have that environment up and running and we can go ahead and connect into it. One big thing that we looked at, and I'll drive through it while this kicks off, is in this case, in this particular case, we have set up RDP connectivity. So we provide you a public IP, and that public IP would be available to connect to and routed to an internal machine. And in this case, the public IP, okay, it's in process, so I don't think it's going to show us this part. Okay, so that's not good. Yeah, because it is in process. So we'll go ahead and cancel out of here. But in this case, what we've done is we provided an RDP session reroute from your public IP to on port 3389 to one of the virtual servers being replicated, which in this case is AIT SRV01. And once it's completed, we'll go ahead and show you where you can go ahead and set that up in the failover plan. So we'll go back and look at the ready, and we'll see what it shows. Oh, there we go. They are active. So right now you have an active failover with 5 VMs. So Sean, before I jump into the council, do you have you want to add anything here?
Well, you can see, I mean, you do a lot of the legwork when you get the replication set up. So in the event of a disaster, essentially you could see, I mean, within a few clicks, Ernesto was able to fail over these 5 servers based off of the failover plan. So, it's similar to disaster recovery planning that you might have done 20 years ago. But the beauty of this is you're going to come into Veeam and maybe a half a dozen clicks, right, Ernesto? You're going to fail over
Yep,
those machines, maybe less. And as you can see, they're already up and running that quickly. So from the time of disaster to the time of recovery is minimal and minimal business impact interruption. And really, that's key. And that's why these services are available.
exactly, exactly. And now we see them active, so we'll go ahead and connect into, as you can see, at SRV01. What we'll do is, so I have a shortcut which allows me, again, off the network, um, to be able to connect into the public IP that's available to me. And as you can see, we will connect into the VM,
You know,
and of course,
live demos are always fun.
uh, look at that. I made a quick setting change before I launched the failover plan, and it went ahead and it removed. That's what I was afraid of. It went ahead and removed the information in the public IP. Look at that.
Well, they can see how it
Well,
would.
they can see how it works. Definitely, we'll come back to it. So let's go take a quick look. Maybe it just takes a little bit of time, but we'll try it again. Yeah, yeah. There's something called over preparing, Sean.
Yeah, it's okay.
So that,
But the good news is here. I mean, what we're talking about is the ability to be prepared in a disaster and also being able to test. The nice part about using this service is, like you mentioned before, from a testing perspective, you can pretty much test anytime, and
yeah,
depending on the number of servers, depending on what's going on in the environment, you can fail over to a server, and you can proactively make sure you can test. And that's really key to being able to be prepared in the event of a disruption. But
and
as
this is why we're testing today, right? So because technology does sometimes really have a little glimpse, right? So we test, we adapt, and we make sure that we're ready, right? So it's all about testing. As you can see here in the lab failover plan, I went ahead and I clicked on the undo, and it's as simple as Sean mentioned. It's as simple as either undoing with the changes or undoing without the changes. In this case, I will undo without the changes, and the failover plan will kick off. Um, and go ahead and shut down those VMs on the remote site and be able to again make the changes you need required in order to test it off again and get success.
Yep, yep, and it's that simple.
That simple.
Now we're back to production.
We are going back to production, right? So again, as it is two independent environments, right? You can test this as many times as you like, when you like. So it's not an activity. I think one of the key points, it's not an activity that we do after hours. It could be an activity that you during hours with the right teams, at play. So you can take the time really to mature that process and continue going into the environment and making it better and more mature in order to really hit those RTO and RPO targets.
Exactly.
So I will
Yep.
go ahead and close the shared screen while this continues. Well, actually, we'll leave it as it continues, Sean. Maybe you just want to bring up the next deck.
Yep. Yep.
So
And
to summarize, I'll let you, Sean, go through
Sure.
this summarize, right?
So, to kind of summarize where we went today, what we talked about, where we're at. So, there's no need to invest in a second site. Unlike many years ago, you'd have to have redundant data centers geographically dispersed so many miles apart. You can work with, Assurance IT, and we can do replication. We can encrypt and send data through a secure SSL connection with no additional VPN, no additional networking, be able to fail over, be able to connect. We can maintain complete visibility and control, and it's fully integrated, between Veeam Cloud Connect, Assurance IT, and the Veeam Service Provider console. So it's great solution, and Assurance IT and Veeam work together to provide you this service, and we're more than happy to help answer questions, work with you, and develop a solution from that
Yeah,
standpoint.
no, definitely. From that standpoint, that we do on a daily basis here at Assurance IT, right? We work with organizations really to make sure that we encompass those level one, level two, and level three servers and find the right solution that fits their business needs because not all organizations are the same. So, being able to work with different organizations at different levels, understanding the different cases, we are subject matter experts when it comes to disaster recovery as a service, right? There's um, different ways you can tackle the same problem, right? So our job is to provide you the different possibilities, the different solutions, the different mechanisms you can put in place. And above and beyond the technology, it's about people and process, and that's what we do. We help organizations get those objectives completed and put check markers in those boxes when it comes to DR. So, Sean, once again, I appreciate you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Um, was a great conversation. I think we hit the mark. We're at the 30-minute mark. Just want to take some time to really focus in on the next Untapped. We talk about backup being the last line of defense, and a lot of customers ask, well, what's the first line of defense, or what should we focus on above and beyond DR? Right, the four main pillars: MDR, backup and disaster recovery, security education customers, and cyber insurance. And the next one will be Sentinel One and its best-in-class EDR solution for endpoint detection and response. Really, we want to showcase their patented and storyline technology on how they can detect at a high velocity threats and keep it simple in a simple UI where you can see those threats and be able to remediate one to many. So join us on November 3rd, where we will circle back with Sentinel One and get that knowledge around EDR and MDR. If you want to stick around for another 30 seconds, I will go back to the environment. While we were talking, I went ahead and I took the time to relaunch it with the right settings. So it's
Perfect.
it's a it's a hit or fail here now. So it could be that it will not work, but I'm confident in myself. Let's go ahead and give this a shot
One more
now
try.
that we went ahead and we plugged in what we needed to plug in. There we go. So as you can see, I'm connecting to that public IP and it went ahead and translated to that SRv01 server. I'm logging in. Bingo, I'm here. We open up a command prompt. We do an NS lookup, and you can see I'm pointing to the local domain controller. We do a simple ping, AIT SRv02, 02, SRv03, and 04. So I have access to that environment. And as I said, the next step is now that you do have access, get in there with your application teams, install the applications that they need to be able to connect to, and mature that process. Just wanted to get that one out of the way, Sean. I hate
Yeah, I
throwing
know.
out the
You don't
blank
want to.
memos, man.
You felt incomplete, but now we can
I There we go. Now we can continue with
check
the
the
rest of my
box.
day. Well, once again, thank you everyone for joining. I appreciate you sticking through the 35 minutes with us. It was great talking to you, Sean, and hope to see you soon end the year.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All
Have a
right.
great
Have a
fall.
great one.
Talk to you soon. Thank you,
Bye
Ernesto.
bye now.
Always love being